Welcome to another with the HTC One Mini 2 versus the Motorola Moto G, which is looking really quite good, both of them, but of course HTC has a metal back cover, 30 megapixel camera versus only 5. Both have a flashlight, of course both have a headphone port. The on and off switch on the HTC is right here on top, which I think not that handy. Here on the side it's really a lot better with the Motorola to turn it on and off. And also on the bottom micro USBs and microphones, of course, all built in. The Motorola also have a micro SD card slot since this year. They have now the LTE micro SD version, which costs $200 instead of 170, which is still a lot cheaper than the 400 you have to pay for the HTC One Mini 2. But of course, you have the metal design, and this is real metal, and it costs a lot of money. And also the micro SD card slot is built in, and the nano SIM, which is of course also quite good, and the cameras on both, if you compare them, really not comparable. They are really not that much comparable, since here we have only 1.3 megapixel versus 5 megapixel, so we can even record full HD movies on the front with the HTC One Mini 2, and you can see here that the quality on both is really quite good, but of course a lot better with the HTC. So let's compare the back cameras with 30 megapixel versus 5. Again here, a lot of difference, more reddish. The right picture, I think the HTC has a lot more real colors, but otherwise it's a little bit slower, even though both have the same processor, even inside the Snapdragon 400 quad-core processor with 1 gig of RAM, and internally both have 16 gigs of memory, or actually only 8 on here, but it's also available with 16 if you don't want to buy the micro SD version. Otherwise, you can see here really that we have here the Sense UI on the left on the HTC, and otherwise here on the Android only on the Motorola Moto G, the regular OS, which is a little bit more boring, but maybe for some people more handy to use. But also just standard Android apps are installed on the Motorola Moto G, which are maybe for some people not enough. Pinterest and Facebook are the apps that I installed myself. They are built-in Facebook and Twitter apps actually already on here, and also in just 2 folders all the Google apps that you can also find here. But we have extra apps like Productivity, Drive, Scribble, Polaris Office, and even better, Flashlight, Calculator, Voice Recorder, and all that kind of stuff that is already also on here, but not all of them. Like for example, Flashlight is missing in the standard Google repertoire. So otherwise, this was just a really short comparison here between a plastic and a metal phone, half the price, full or a high price for about the same hardware. Of course, when it comes to camera and build quality and sound, because they have boom sound of course also built in, the HTC is better. The on and off switch button could be a little bit more better reachable, because it's really quite high, but otherwise maybe just check out for yourself which device you would buy. If you want a really everyday usage device, then buy the HTC, and for just making a few phone calls and using some Android apps, the Motorola should be also enough, because the cameras are really not as good as on the HTC, and this feels also smaller, lighter, and of course also it feels even slimmer and better with the metal. So thank you much for tuning in. My name is Balazs. Don't forget to subscribe, and thank you much for tuning in.